Welcome everyone. We're live.
You're live.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone to Tuesday, September 7th, Madison City Council meeting. Great to see everybody here. We are also recording and streaming live on City of Madison YouTube channel. We always start with with rising, removing our hats, and reciting the Lord's Prayer, and followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And we'll get into roll call. Thank you. Our Father, who art in heaven,
hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and glory forever.
I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks everyone. Roll call, clerk.
Thevenow? Here. Lucy DeTillo?
Here.
Rampy?
Here.
Chatham?
Here.
Bartlett?
Here.
Dan DeTillo?
Here.
Council, have you had an opportunity to review the minutes from the August 17th, 2021 meeting? So we'll have a motion to approve those minutes or make an amendment.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. All right. First, let's start with a presentation, a couple of proclamations. We have a great agenda tonight. And I don't know, is Carol Dozier here? Okay, well, let's then move to the proclamation acknowledging the 234th anniversary of the Constitution Week. I think, Ann, are you here for this? Okay. Council, I'd like to read a proclamation. This is Constitution Week. Ann, how are you?
Well, thank you.
Whereas September 17th, 2021 marks the 234th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate this occasion. And on this day and during this week, we celebrate our great founding charter as an enduring beacon of freedom. And whereas in the more than 2 centuries since its ratification, it has served as an unparalleled engine for human progress. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th through September 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Bob G. Courtney, as Mayor of the City of Madison, do hereby proclaim September 17th through September 23rd, 2021 as Constitution Week in the City of Madison, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 for all freedom-loving Americans to defend our Constitution against those who threaten our sacred constitutional freedoms. Here, set my hand and cause this to be affixed to the Great Seal of the City of Madison today, September the 7th. And thank you so much. If you'd like to say a few words to council, please do. Thank you very much. And stick the mic there. We've got it turned on for you. Thank you, Ann.
I'm Ann Roller, representing the Daughters of the American Revolution. DAR has a mission of historic preservation, education, and patriotism. Therefore, because the Constitution is the basis of our democracy, we feel it should be the signing of the Constitution, which was September 17th, 1787, should be commemorated each year with Constitution Week. And as Mr. Courtney said, it's from September the 17th through the 23rd. I want to thank the mayor and the city for this proclamation.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
And also, we are having Patriot Day, which is Saturday. It is marking not only the beginning of, soon to be the beginning of Constitutional Week, but the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And we're also celebrating the 175th anniversary of the number 2 Washington Firehouse here in the City of Madison. So there's lots to recognize, celebrate, and commemorate this weekend and in the next couple of weeks. So please join us on the riverfront for that, for those festivities. I'm not sure if Carol or is anyone here from KDH, King Cyrus Hospital? Well, notwithstanding that, I'd like to read a proclamation of appreciation to all of our healthcare workers. As you know, we've been enduring some very difficult times across the country and in our community over the course of the last 18 months. So I'd like to read this proclamation in honor of all of our healthcare workers. Whereas those who have chosen the healthcare profession as their calling serve their communities with a reverence for human life and individual dignity. And since March of 2020, our nation has been experiencing one of the worst pandemics in its history because of COVID-19. Whereas physicians, nurses, healthcare aides, EMTs, home healthcare professionals, and others who work in healthcare have continued to remain dedicated to relieving pain and suffering while risking their own lives and the well-being of their families. Whereas the sick in our community, whether afflicted with COVID-19 or other illnesses, are treated and tended to by devoted healthcare workers who surround, nurture, and support our loved ones during a time when family may not be allowed by their loved one's bedside. Now therefore, I, Bob Courtney, Mayor of the City of Madison, do hereby honor and extend our deepest thanks and gratitude to the healthcare workers of our community for their heroic efforts and in recognition of their spirit, their love, and healthcare provided to their fellow man during the COVID-19 pandemic. And further, I encourage all residents of Madison, Jefferson County to acknowledge our healthcare workers for their devotion to the health and well-being of our citizens. I further encourage all residents to consider doing their part to overcome this pandemic and to protect our community's public health and economy by getting vaccinated if you are able to do so. In witness thereof, today, September 7, 2021. It goes without saying that public health and the health of our economy go hand in hand. I speak to Carol Dozier, who's the CEO of KDH, several times a week. My wife, as you know, is an intensive care nurse. Rick, you're also working in healthcare as well. We thank you guys and applaud you all for all the efforts you're putting forth for the health of our community. We're at a really critical time in healthcare capacity, worse than it was, frankly, a year ago. So we honor all of our healthcare workers and literally just what they do to serve our community every single day. And I just want them to know that myself and the City of Madison, and on behalf of City Council, we're very grateful for everybody who is working in healthcare. We know how hard it is, how stressful it is, how overworked and understaffed our hospital and healthcare apparatus is right now. And again, let's just do what we can to acknowledge the contributions that they make and do our part to help improve the public health of our community. I'll present this to Carol tomorrow. All right, next up, we'd like to also celebrate some fine work with our Madison Police Department. So I'd ask Chief Wallace to come to the podium and honor and recognize some of our police department employees.
It is an honor to be here tonight and recognize the outstanding work our men and women of law enforcement do, and I appreciate the council letting me bring them forward to do this recognition, so thank you. First, I'd like to ask our detectives to step forward. Detective Ricky Harris, Detective Kyle Cutshaw, Detective Sean Scudder. I think they should dress like this every day. That'll look good, don't they? Comb their hair and everything.
I'm sure they would like that. Yes.
In the afternoon hours of August 25th, 2021, Madison police responded to the backyard of a residence in the 700 block of Walnut Street, reference a man down. Responding officers found the male to be deceased, the victim of an apparent homicide. Madison police detectives Ricky Harris and Sean Scudder responded to the scene. The detectives developed a suspect and began what would be a time-efficient but very thorough investigation. The detectives continued to follow up the information and the evidence, which led them to developing a suspect, Keith Tellish, 48, of Milton, Kentucky. Detectives Harris, Scudder, and Cutshaw responded to Tellish's US 421 residence in Milton, Kentucky, armed with a search warrant for his residence. The search warrant and follow-up investigation led detectives to seeking and receiving an arrest warrant for Tellish. The accused was taken into custody by the Trimble County Sheriff, and Tellish eventually waived extradition back to Indiana. Detectives Harris, Scudder, and Cutshaw exemplify the best of the best in law enforcement. These officers worked tirelessly to follow up on every lead, which eventually led to Tellish's arrest for the murder of Dana Hodge. On behalf of the grateful citizens of Madison, Indiana, it's truly my honor as Chief of Police to recognize these outstanding detectives for a job well done. Thank you, gentlemen. No, I was just saying that these generally don't end this quick. It is efficient. I'm very proud of them. It's a very, very solid case, but they worked around the clock. So I'd also like to recognize their wives and significant others who I think are here, and thank you for putting up with allowing them to work essentially around the clock when you have little kids to take care of this. It's very important in our community to wrap these things up, hopefully in a timely fashion, but an efficient fashion, because they can certainly take a life of their own on and create a lot of havoc and concern in our community. So the dedication just speaks for itself on taking care of this case. Although with an arrest, the investigation didn't end. They continue to work on it and make the case even that much stronger. So again, thank you, gentlemen. I'm very proud of you.
Good job, guys.
And I know they're really excited about hanging these on their wall later on. Thank you. Good job, guys.
Appreciate it.
Anything you guys want to say? Anybody want to say anything?
A little shy now.
That's a first. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to ask for the podium, Patrolman Cameron Blankenship and Patrolman Zach Nicholson, please. During the late night hours of August 28th, 2021, Madison police officers Cameron Blankenship and Zachary Nicholson assisted the Hanover Police Department with the vehicle pursuit. While en route to the assist, the pursuing Hanover officer reported the fleeing vehicle had crashed on Interstate Block Road. Officers Blankenship and Nicholson arrived at the crash scene within minutes. Officers found the fleeing vehicle to be on fire with 3 occupants still inside. Officers attempted to extinguish the fire with the extinguishers, however each time the fire reignited. Patrolmen Blankenship and Nicholson quickly assessed the situation and successfully removed the occupants from the burning vehicle. The backseat female passenger of the vehicle was found unconscious and not breathing. Officers administered CPR and the female passenger began to breathe on her own. Because of Officers Blankenship and Nicholson and Pence of the Hanover Police Department's heroic actions, all 3 occupants of the vehicle survived. It's with great pride and deep admiration that I, John I. Wallace, Chief of the Madison Police Department, award Officers Cameron Blankenship and Zachary Nicholson with the Life-Saving Medals of Honor. Great job. Very proud of you. Thank you, Council.
Chief, keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mayor. They do it all.
We're doing a good job of making you look good.
Yeah, they are. Joey, do you have something like that? We can leave that where it is.
And I just want to reiterate too, our gratitude, to all of our first responders, our law enforcement, our fire protection, our EMS. I mean, we're just blessed to live in a community like Madison that has so much talent and commitment to the community. So thank you guys. Moving on, we have a busy night with first reading of several ordinances, so we'll turn it over to our attorney, Jenner.
First, the first ordinance is ordinance number 2021-14. This is the budget ordinance for 2022. These are a little difficult to read, but I'll try and kind of get through it. Notice is hereby given to the taxpayers in the Madison Civil City of Jefferson County, Indiana, that the proper officers of the Madison Civil City will conduct a public hearing on the year 2022 budget. Following this meeting, any 10 or more taxpayers may object to a budget, tax rate, or tax levy by filing an objection petition with the proper officers of the Madison Civil City not more than 7 days after this hearing. The objection to the petition may identify the provisions of the budget, tax rate, and the tax levy to which the taxpayers have objected. If the petition is filed, the Madison Civil City shall adopt a budget, a finding concerning the objections in the petition and testimony presented. Following the aforementioned hearing, the proper officers of the Madison Civil City will meet to adopt the following budget. And the budget is as follows. So that's the first reading on that one. The next one is ordinance number 2021-15, an ordinance fixing salaries of appointed officers and employees of the city of Madison, Indiana for the year 2022. Be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, that from and after the first day of January 2022, the pay salary scale for the appointed officers and employees for the City of Madison shall be as fixed as follows. And that salary is attached to this, or that schedule is attached to this. It outlines all of the positions and the salaries associated with those positions. The next one is ordinance number 2021-16, an ordinance fixing compensation of elected officials of the City of Madison, Indiana for the year 2022. Whereas the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana will consider and take upon the proposed ordinance fixing the annual compensation of all elected officials for the calendar year 2022. The meeting was duly published and provided by Indiana Code 36-4-7-2, and now therefore be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, that from and after the first day of January 2022, the compensation for the elected officials of the City of Madison, Indiana shall hereby be as fixed as follows. The mayor, $73,531.19, clerk treasurer, $64,224.41, and county council members, $7,353.12. The Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, as required by Indiana Code 36-4-7-2, hereby fix the annual compensation for all elected officials of the City of Madison, Indiana, beginning January 1, 2022, and continuing thereafter until changed as provided by law. And the final ordinance on first reading is ordinance number 2021-17, and this one is sponsored by Councilwoman Rampy. An ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, establishing the Historic Preservation Fund Grant Nonreverting Fund. Whereas the State Board of Accounts in their June 2020 Cities and Towns Bulletins has stated that a separate fund for each grant is required. And whereas the City of Madison entered into a grant sub-award agreement with the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, Division of Historic Preservation and Archaeology. And whereas the City of Madison wishes to establish a fund to deposit funds and pay expenses related to the Historic Preservation Fund grant. Now therefore be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, as follows. An account is established for the purposes of depositing money from the granting agency, appropriations from the city accounts, or from any lawful source for payment of required obligations for the City of Madison on the accepted grant. The account shall be named the Historic Preservation Fund Grant Nonreverting Fund, and all funds contained in the account shall be expended only for the exclusive purposes of paying expenses related to the grant. The account shall be non-reverting and exist perpetually unless terminated by subsequent ordinance enacted by the Common Council. If the account is terminated by subsequent ordinance enacted by the Common Council, the remaining balance of the terminated account shall revert to the general budget of the Common Council. And those are all of the ordinances on first reading.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Council, are there any reports, recommendations, and other business from the standing select committees of the City Council? It looks like we have on the agenda board appointments as well, so I'll turn it over to Council President Rampy.
So, we would like to make two board recommendations or appointments this evening. The first one, as Amanda Creech is no longer serving on City Council, that opened up an opening on the Animal Shelter Board. And our recommendation for that board would be Hannah Fagan. So we need a first.
Do you want to do them all at once, sir?
You can do them, all together if you like.
Oh, yeah, so we can. And the second one is for the Police Merit Board. And we would like to make a recommendation for Paula Menke. Paula Menke is a registered nurse. She's worked at KDH since 1989. She's served on their peer disciplinary board. And she also has participated in quite a bit of hiring for their imaging students program.
So, Council, are you making a motion for both those
Yes.
appointments? Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll take is all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign? Passes unanimously.
Joe, could I make a quick comment on the point? Just, I'm Dave Adams, I live someplace on Mulberry. I just want to thank Katie for being on the Merit Board. I'm the president again this year, so it's nice to appreciate all your good work and your guidance and all the good things you do with us. We just really appreciate you taking time to be on there with us. And I think you've got a very good appointee, so we really appreciate your help.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Yes.
Okay, moving on with anything else, Council?
No, we were just waiting for you.
Okay, moving on. So, Chief Wallace, is there anything else you want to report, sir?
Nothing special to report, however, I'd be glad to answer any other questions that the council may have. I did present to the Board of Public Works this morning with regards to some traffic issues we're experiencing at Libby Middleton School. It's just kind of carried on from year to year. This year it seems even worse, I think probably due to more kids being picked up by parents. I did reach out to the principal. We had a nice meeting with her and the school resource officers, and she sent out a letter to all the parents and asking them to not block West 3rd Street at times and at its peak. West 3rd Street's blocked from the school all the way down to Craigmont, which we simply can't have that for safety reasons. So we will give a little reprieve for a few days until all the Main Street issues are taken care of. That's kind of create even a worse situation, but we're asking the parents to consider maybe parking somewhere, walking up, picking up their kids, and any other options that people would come up with. But unfortunately, that school was built in the early 1900s. It was intended to be a school where you walk to, and it's obviously not very efficient for picking up a number of vehicles. So when Main Street's done, we'll hopefully see how that works out. Just ask the parents to not block 3rd Street. If it is backing up, to circle around, come back, and try not to get there 20 minutes before school lets out, because that just creates some issues. So we'll continue to work on it. That's something we do got to take care of, and we just can't have 3rd Street being blocked like that. So we'll continue to work at it. But if anybody has any other ideas, suggestions, I would certainly welcome them. I think we've kind of bannered around everything we could think of. Staggered dismissal times, but then there's so many siblings go to school, that would just create issues. So we'll continue to look at it and work. But if you have any thoughts, please share them with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Chief, I know, and I mentioned today too that Dr. Studebaker is working on it as well. Combination of better coordination, signage, and of course enforcement will be key there, but it's a solvable issue if we just
Yes. Yeah.
follow common sense, really.
We don't wanna be rude to our parents, that's the last thing in the world we wanna do, but we're simply gonna have to have it moved if it backs up down the street, because there's no way to get an ambulance or a police car or fire truck to that area, should we need it, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Chief Mindy or Deputy Mayor McGee? You want to give an update on Main Street? Oh, okay.
Happy to. I talked to Board of Works this morning, and they actually had, Gary Newman from the company that is doing our liquid road application on Main Street come in with me, because we wanted to talk through with the board some of the issues we are facing in the second phase of this project. We came to, I think, a resolution, with input from Chief Wallace, the board themselves, and, Gary, and, so just to update you on where we are, we've started second phase, crack sealing and mastic repair, which is some of the deeper cracks. That's about halfway done at this point. They are down in right at the railroad bridge. I think they finished at the railroad bridge today. So they will come back, I believe tomorrow, they'll come back at Jefferson on the south side and work the south side. Traffic will remain open like it was the first time. There'll be a lane each direction as they work on the south side, again, toward that same bridge. So that should happen Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week, and they hope to have that completed. That puts them ready to apply the liquid road application. So that's where we kind of talked through with BPW this morning. That has this process of working and leaving traffic open while they try to work. When they're doing the crack sealing, it needs to sit for a little bit and harden, and then you can drive on it, you can walk on it. We ran into issues with the public on that, even allowing that to happen for a little while. We had barricades, we had cones, we had flaggers. We called in NPD and asked for their assistance later in the week because people were driving through the cones, driving around the cones, stopping, getting out of their vehicles, moving barricades, and driving across the work area. We had 2 instances where someone at 2 different places drove through the barricades. So didn't even move them, just drove through them, which put the barricades out into Main Street. The one at Mulberry happened, it threw the barricade in front of a truck that was coming down Main Street. He had to stop and get out and move it so he could continue on when we had 1 lane open each way at that point. So the workers from the pavement company, the flaggers, try to catch people that are either walking or driving into the workspace. I have been out there watching them run from one intersection to another, trying to catch people and tell them, we're working here, you can't drive in here. Last week we had 2 instances where people drove around barricades and ended up driving in the lane that was coming toward them, that was open. And we had twice where they ended up nose to nose because they are both trying to drive in the same lane. It became a safety issue for the workers, was my main concern. And people just expected to travel at the same rate of speed that they normally do, with restrictions, and it became a dangerous situation for the workers. So we talked through with Board of Works this morning what our options are when it comes to the liquid road application, because that's a little different, as we've talked about. It's a 2 application process. When the first application goes down, it needs to dry for a couple of hours. Then it gets reapplied, and it will have to dry for even longer because it's thicker, depending on the weather and the humidity and all that stuff. What they've asked us for is 7 to 7. 7 in the morning, they'll put an application down, they'll start working, get an application down, let it dry, come back through, put another one on, let it dry, and just to be sure, I mean, usually it can be opened by around 5 o'clock or so, but just to be sure that it's safe to drive on, it's not gonna, hurt the product, they like to leave it closed till 7, then open the road and it's good to drive on. So 1 day is what they're asking for in each area that they're working. What we presented to BPW as the options are to use the same profile that we did around this time, leaving 2 lanes of traffic open. The problem is, you do a longer stretch that way, it's a lot more to manage in terms of cross streets, and they will not be able to drive across it or walk across it. So trying to manage the pedestrian traffic that's gonna try and walk across it at cross sections or just across the street, the traffic coming through alleys, cross intersections. We know they sort of disregard cones and barricades anyway. We had a police car parked at, I think at Craigmont, that had flashing lights on to alert people that they were entering a work zone. They drove around that and went where they wanted to go. So the other option we presented was simply to go 2 blocks at a time, close it entirely. So we are proposed Jefferson to West Street on Monday, next Monday, close it entirely. We can close off the sidewalks on each side. We can close off the streets on each end.
Well, sidewalks will be open, you're just saying
Sidewalks
walking
will
from
be
the
open
street
for
access.
pedestrian, but not to walk into the street. They'll have it closed on Monday, they'll get it done, it'll be open Monday night, and they'll move to the next 2 block section. So Tuesday would be West Street to Broadway, and so on down the road. It's 1 day of interruption, as opposed to probably 2 days of interruption when we do north and south. Plus, it's just a lot safer environment for the workers, and everyone, really. So Gary Newman and I took a walk this afternoon and visited store owners between Jefferson and West. We got the south side done. Tomorrow morning we'll go back and finish the north side, just to have a conversation with them, explain to them what's going on, what the timing will be, why we are where we are in this recommendation. Everybody has been very understanding of it. They understand we need to get the work done on Main Street. Anytime you have to interrupt traffic flow or interrupt their business, it's not ideal, and we understand that, but we also have to get the road repaired. So we're hoping that everyone will understand a 1 day closure. It's not even a full 24 hours, it's 7 to 7, it's 12 hours. So we're gonna try and do it that way to maintain the integrity of the product and the safety for our workers.
We're sad. Neither solution or potential solution was ideal, and it's been almost 15 years since any repair work has been done on Main Street, and when we accepted the road transfer agreement back in 2015, I believe, we took on this responsibility. This is about $1 million worth of work that's just to patch us, for a few years until the larger federal highway grant comes in to play, where there would be, a complete mill and asphalt of the road, along with some other work that our steering committee is planning. So, not ideal. Appreciate everybody's patience as we work through it, but we also have to take into consideration the, safety of the workers, and that's been a bit of an issue.
I would add 2 things. One is, I do think doing it this way, being able to close it and put the product down curb to curb, will strengthen the integrity of the product. Anywhere there is an overlap or a seam is where you'll get the breakdown in the product. So being able to just do it the way they need to, overlap where they need to, I think will create a better end result in the product. The other is down on the west end, especially Lucy, probably from your house west. That's going to present some specific challenges, because everywhere else that we're working has access behind, either through an alley or a side street, close enough that people can walk a couple of blocks and get to their home or their business. Down on that far west end, that is not the case. So Gary and I have been talking about that, Kenny and I have been talking about it. We'll have to get a little bit more creative and a lot more communicative for folks down there. That would be great. We will work it out. People may have to park on the other side of the street that day. They may have to park on the other side and walk a block around to get out of the work zone to their door. We will not block access to anyone's home so that they can't get to their home. But we're gonna have to get a little bit more creative on that, so.
Will there be personnel at the barricades to reinforce to folks that the barricades are there for a reason?
There will, so, working in a smaller zone will also free up more barricades, more cones, and more people, more flyers, so that we can, maintain a stricter, tighter control on it. MPD is also going to help us with, lights and officers where needed, to help enforce that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. All right, moving on the agenda, no bills on third reading. We do have 2 bills on second reading.
First bill on second reading is ordinance number 2021-12, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, establishing the Indiana Humanities Grant Non-Reverting Fund. Are there any comments or questions from either the council or the public at this time?
Joe, I'll just mention that these ordinances are required by the State Board of Accounts in order to establish segregated funds for grant proceeds.
And the second one is ordinance number 2021-13, an ordinance of the Common Council, City of Madison, Indiana, establishing the National Trust Grant Non-Reverting Fund. Hearing no questions or comments or anything from the public, those will move on to the third reading.
Council, I'd like to back up just a little bit before we go into public and mayor's comments. We do have one additional appointment that I wanted to make tonight, and that is a mayor's appointment to the recently formed Public Arts Commission. Based on the ordinance that was approved, City Council opines to those appointments. I'd like to recommend Eric Fagan to be appointed as the second member of that Public Arts Commission. We're still rounding out the recommended appointments, but most people know Eric as a local artist and educator. Has great academic background in art and has also served in other, volunteer capacities that support art in the community, and recently was on the board of the Community Foundation. He's also co-founder of the Gallery 115. So unless you have any questions, I'd like to ask for a motion and a second and approval for Eric Fagan as an appointment to the Public Arts Commission, please.
Move to approve the appointment of Eric Fagan.
And I would second that.
Okay. Any discussion? Any public comment?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, council. All right, I don't have anything on miscellaneous, but this is the part of our agenda where we can go to public comment section. If there's anybody in the audience who'd like to approach the mayor's office or council, they can come to the podium now, identify your name and address, and what your comments are to us, please. Thank you. Moving on to mayor's comments, I'll be as brief as I possibly can. We already covered a few things that we talked about in the Board of Public Works today, and of course we had the proclamation dealing with COVID-19 and the appreciation for our healthcare workers. There's a lot going on this weekend. Just a few things we'll mention will be the Prince of Peace Festival this weekend. We're also having Patriot Day. There's a cotton mill event Our parks program has a very robust schedule with baseball and football at the high school and at Rucker. I want to mention too, in the redevelopment commission meeting today, the commission approved a contract to conduct a downtown parking study. We recently concluded a sidewalk asset management inventory and report with HWC Engineering, and now we are going to engage with HWC to do a downtown parking study. City of Madison seems to be, the tale of two cities in a number of ways, but weekday parking and then weekend parking definitely has different supply and demand factors, and so HWC is going to do a very comprehensive parking study for us to help manage the supply, identify where our peak need is, and also make some policy recommendations. They've done this type of work in other communities before. We shared all of that information with the redevelopment commission. So we're trying to really be, again, data driven. We know that parking is an issue downtown, both during the weekday and on the weekend. So hopefully this analysis by HWC will identify some solutions we can explore through redevelopment.
When was that last study completed?
We just approved the contract today.
No. When was the prior one completed?
Oh, the sidewalk survey?
Parking study.
I don't think we've ever done a downtown parking study.
A comprehensive one?
No. Our goal here is to be data driven, particularly for asset management purposes, but also to understand what our policy should be and where our investment should be. And the sidewalk asset management report that they prepared for us was really, really useful, particularly because we incorporated a rating system like we use Payzer for streets, and now it's really allowing us to look at sidewalks and streets together. In an ideal scenario, under that example, if you can work on streets and sidewalks at the same time, rather than streets and then come back and do sidewalks, there are grant resources available to us so we can do both at the same time. And it's a more effective way to deploy resources and to make capital investments. We think that there is, like I said, a combination of supply issues as well as policy issues, and we're going to identify that through this parking study, downtown parking study. We did create a designated area that will take into consideration what our workforce needs are during the week and what our arts and entertainment needs are on the weekend. So looking forward to it. We are also working on kind of a new blight elimination strategy. I just want to share a little story with you, and that is, since we met the last, there's been 2 articles printed in the Madison Courier, and the arc of those stories couldn't be any more distinctive. And what I mean by that is, a week or so ago, as Chief Wallace was, commending our officers for good detective work, we had a homicide on Walnut Street. And that homicide took place in the rear of an abandoned building that has sat in that state for 10 to 15 years. It's an unsafe structure. It really pointed out what we've talked about with regard to the need to attract capital investment to improve our neighborhoods. And there's 2 approaches to blight elimination. One is incentives, and the other side is enforcement. Our incentive side of blight elimination has worked really well. We've attracted probably $2.5 million of private investment through partnership with the city's PACE program, because we changed that program to intentionally be designed to attract private capital and repair dilapidated buildings across the city, downtown and on the hilltop. That's worked really, really well. The part of our blight elimination that has not worked very well is the enforcement side of things. So we have properties across the city who have received numerous citations of being a nuisance property not that many being cited as unsafe structures because it's really difficult to get to that point. But after the homicide, we went down and met with neighbors in that area and business owners. Myself, chief, superintendent of streets, city planner, building inspector, and we cleaned up the property in the rear. That was a very disturbing sight from where a person was living there who was unfortunately murdered. And the point of me kind of creating this comparison is the fact that when we allow disinvestment to essentially invade our neighborhoods without using our power of enforcement, it creates really negative influences. As hard as we try to incentivize the right behavior and attract investment, and Walnut Street is one of those transitioning neighborhoods where homeowners down there are doing a fantastic job of investing in their properties and unfortunately now recovering from the flood in June. But we also have some property owners all across town that are ambivalent to the condition of the properties. And they're ambivalent partially because we've, as a city on the policy side, have been a bit complacent in enforcing our policies because it's really hard. It really is hard. I mean, I don't fault any prior administration for the lack of enforcement because it is extremely difficult when you're talking about private property rights. Those are sacred in the eyes of a lot of local ordinances and state statutes. However, it's not impossible to try to encourage the right behavior. So that particular property and properties like it attracted a recurring nuisance, which then created crime in the neighborhood, facilitated, I should say, unabated crime in the neighborhood, which then led to the most unfortunate circumstances, which was a homicide. And the people who live down there are rightfully concerned that they live next door or near this property. The business owners are concerned. So the arc I wanted to present here is that in Saturday's paper, I believe it was, the Frazie's were recognized for their restoration of a property that caught on fire on the west end of Main Street. I think it was known as, was it Hit's house? Hit's.
That's what they said.
It had a long history in Madison, and it was on the same path as many homes that are damaged by fire, where there's not enough insurance proceeds to make adequate repairs. And it's a historic district, so we're always hesitant and cautious about demolishing a historic structure. That's a good story because our building inspector, our head of planning, myself, the property owner, all got together and collaborated to work toward finding an immediate solution and a property buyer who then came in. We provided PACE money, they provided private capital, and now we have a beautiful restored property in a high-profile area of town. That's the arc of what our approaches have been for blight elimination. But even though we've been investing more and more toward PACE, and the Redevelopment Commission at the last meeting contributed another $250,000 to PACE, we need to do a better job on the enforcement side of things. So team in City Hall, we're working together to essentially create a property list across town of nuisances, unsafe structures, and also look for concentrations in areas and where we can be proactive with those property owners. That's the key, is communicating with the property owners and letting them know that we're concerned, as much as the neighbors are, about the disposition of that property. Boarded up, blighted, abandoned, uninhabitable, unsafe structures have no place in our neighborhoods. So we've got to be proactive in finding solutions to it, even though those are harder solutions to find and take longer and cost more. So we are gonna be embarking on another stage of that, where we have both sides of the coin to work with property owners on, because I think it's unfair for the people that live and work and invest in those neighborhoods to have ambivalent property owners adjacent to them. And again, there is a cause and effect, and we just need to be more diligent about finding positive outcomes, even though it's harder. So that's it on blight elimination and downtown parking study. I do also want to mention that, you know, we're trying to take care of flood and drainage issues across the city. We're continuing to work with the Army Corps of Engineers. We're doing the document preparation for them now for our flood risk mitigation planning. We're working with the Department of Natural Resources, and we're also working with an engineering firm to help us coordinate an RFP to do additional cleaning in the floodway. Crooked Creek watershed is the primary tributary for enormous amounts of drainage from all over the city and the county. And while we have already started removing some debris in the creek, we're limited because we can only essentially remove what we can reach from the outside or manually. And there are some very, very significant debris that's too heavy to remove manually, too much vegetation to quickly remove, and we can't remove it from the side. So we are going to issue an RFP in order to do two things: get a permit from the Department of Natural Resources for construction in a floodway, which is required, and then also remove the remaining debris and vegetation that's plaguing the floodway and contributing to flooding. So there's a lot of work to be done there. We're working on flood mitigation every single day, but we're determined to find solutions so that we can mitigate the potential damage from future flooding. And as you recall from a prior council meeting, we had a resident on Crozier Avenue talking about stormwater drainage issues that has been occurring there. So I'm working with Councilman Chatham and our Board of Public Works. We did approve a contract today with CDM Contracting to finish what the city started 5 or 6 years ago, which was drainage improvement along the stormwater drain ditch that services Crozier Avenue, all the way west from the where they discontinued the work previously, all the way down to Cypress and then across under the road to the creek. So happy to say that some progress is being made on a problem that has plagued that area for, as the resident said, 44 years. Stormwater and stormwater drainage, flood risk management is something that is really important. Development standards have changed over the last 75 years, so there's work that we can do from a planning and development side of things too, but we have to take every step that we can in order to, you know, deal with it with the resources that we have, and look toward the future as much as we can and address problems that occur. By no means can we deal with every, you know, drain issue on the hilltop, but we can get a good start, and particularly those areas that are drainage right-of-ways, drainage easements for the city streets. We have a responsibility for those neighbors too to attack the problems where we can. Council, that's all I want to kind of throw out at you tonight. I know it's a lot. Hope you don't mind all those updates, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to thank you for providing us with the continuous updates on what's happening. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yep. And the door's always open, so call me, text me. Don't tag me in a Facebook post, but stop by anytime.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Sometime back, there was discussion of some planning for renovation of the park down on North Broadway.
Yes.
as well as the park down by the bridge. And just curious if there's any updates to the progress in that planning.
There is, and I would say that part of that planning is folded into the READY grant process, which we've talked about before, which has the opportunity to really transform economic development in the city. But relative to those two projects in particular, at the last Parks Board meeting, Nicole Shell and Matt Woolard met with the Parks Board and started, she's already been probably 3 or 4 months now involved in the master plan, the next 5-year master plan for the Parks Department. Our neighborhood parks are quite candidly a mess, lacking investment from a very, very long period of time. But as part of our economic development objectives, we're going to be prioritizing housing, innovation, entrepreneurship, workforce expansion for industry, quality of place and capacity building, gateways, destination development. We score really, really well there, but on Gaines Park in particular, it is one of our top 4 priorities for 2022. And then as the Park Board moves into finishing up their master plan, which is due by the end of this year, they'll identify the remaining priorities for parks, and it's our anticipation we'll do a park bond in order to make the necessary repairs to some of those assets that we have. I'll also mention too that we're actively applying for grants for trails, and we're in the 2nd or 3rd stage of grant process for a major grant for Rucker too. So it's a problem, or I should say it's a challenge, but we have an opportunity to just transform a lot of the community assets across the city. It's going to take time and money. But Gaines Park in particular, we announced that I think back in March or April. We intend at the Broadway reunion, that's happening either later this month or in October. We're going to have some designs and renderings to show the neighborhood kind of what our concepts are and get their feedback too. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Jim.
Bob, I'd like to say thank you about the blight and all the information. Y'all know that's something we've all been on. I'm grateful that you're forging ahead and not just leaning on the laurels of PACE grants, because you're right, there's a whole other, and it's so exciting to hear that. Can't wait to spread that word around town.
Thank you, Lisa. And I know I'm attending a meeting tomorrow night with the East End Neighborhood Watch Group to talk about blight and crime. So we have great eyes and ears, I should say, all across the city. And you know, what I talked about at BPW today was, because we had a neighbor who was really concerned, particularly about Walnut Street, which is, if we have a plan, we can have a strategy. And we've been very reactive from a policy perspective. Now we need to move into that planning stage so we can have a better, more proactive strategy, and that will actually produce the results. Whenever we do that, we generate the outcomes. But when we play whack-a-mole, so to speak, we're just literally, it's hit or miss. I'm grateful for all the investment that's going on around our community. It's been phenomenal. Just think what it's going to be like the next 3 years when we really marry up policy, you know, and enforcement and private investment. We're showing right now through our economic development planning that we believe we can generate $250 million of economic impact to the city in the next 3 years through our economic development partnerships. That's going to require staffing, your support from a budgeting perspective, a lot of planning focus.
The only other thing I would say to the city, because I don't think I've said this at a city council meeting, but at the parks meeting, somebody just go over to the Broadway bathrooms by the basketball courts, because it's an embarrassment to the city. It would be better to just close it down for a while until it can be repaired, especially with COVID, when there's one bathroom in the women's bathroom, there's no door, so you can sit on the commode and see outside on the street. We shouldn't have that in our town. We'll on the conversation here, I don't know how many people know, the women's bathroom with COVID, and we're supposed to be washing our hands a million times. There's one sink that works, the other two do not have water forced to them. So,
Did I know that?
when you're on that walking, you know, I walk 5 miles a day, so you're in the bathroom too, and you notice those things, and those are two things, I think, you know, with the American with Disability Act, not being able to access bathrooms properly, not have hand washing, at least if we had a, you know, a temporary one, that would help. We have pictures of what we talked about tomorrow night about a lot of drug activity going on in that conversation, people are taking pictures, and so there's just a lot of things, you know, that kind of all ties in together, but those bathrooms, I say either close them down and say they're coming soon, or put portalettes, nowadays you can get the hand washing stations inside them. I don't know what kind of expense that is, but anything's better than the embarrassment of sitting on the commode with somebody walking in, there's no door, you're just out there. And, you know, most of you are men, so you don't probably see that part.
Well, like I said, or responded to Mrs. Patterson today when she was talking about blight and crime, I said, you're exactly right, those are problems, we need to deal with them, we need a plan. And that plan can develop into strategy, and you're right about those bathrooms. Now, bicentennial bathrooms are great. We're about to start on major restoration for Crystal Beach, but that's not gonna deal with, that's inside the fence, that's not gonna deal with the exterior bathrooms. So you're right, Lisa.
So when you were discussing private capital, I'm assuming that you're also indicating that there are individuals who could contribute to any of these projects at any given time? Would that be a safe assumption?
We put together a comprehensive plan that identified 42 partners and supporters across the city, where there is literally millions of dollars of private capital ready to flow into our community. We applied for $11.1 million of Ready Grant. The city would probably have to put together another $11 million match. And again, this is still a really fluid process because it's got to go through, it has gone through a screening process with the Southern Indiana Redevelopment Authority, of which we're one of 5 counties in membership of that. Then that plan has to be presented to IEDC at the state. Then that committee screens statewide plan. Just in the 5-county region alone, it's anticipated that we'll apply for $50 million, and there was over $200 million of applications for those $50 million. That's the same dynamic we're experiencing when we're applying for our State Water Infrastructure Fund grant for our Clean Drinking Water program, our Jefferson County Clean Drinking Water program, and our Stormwater program. Everything is oversubscribed because the infrastructure needs across every community is exponential. We do have our ARP money that we're planning on. A lot of that's going to go toward flood and stormwater management infrastructure. There is the infrastructure bill that's making its way through Congress. We're not sure how that's actually going to be dispersed, but the state of Indiana may receive approximately $800 million or so from that. They have been distributing those funds in the past through based on population. There's a lot of work to do over the next, between now really and the end of the year. It's not a whole lot of time left, but between now and the end of the year with regards to getting grant funding. The SWIFT funds, which we applied for, $5 million for the clean drinking water one, and about $160,000 on the stormwater one. There was about $160 million between those two, and there was probably $500 million worth of applications for the monies. So we continue to ask Jefferson County to reconsider. So if anybody, if you please contact Jefferson County Commissioners, ask them to reconsider their financial support for our clean drinking water program. That's going to cost an estimated $15 million. We've asked Jefferson County for $2.5 million of their $6.5 million approximately of ARP money. They indicated they will reconsider, but they have not indicated at what level of support. But we are going to be losing our window for waiting on other sources before we just have to pull the trigger on rates and bring those through the process, both on trash and on water.
And just to be clear, those rates will affect both city and county residents, correct?
Absolutely, because City of Madison provides drinking water to 2/3 of Jefferson County, Rikers Ridge, DuPont, Brooksburg, Canaan, all of the city and the surrounding area, just not west of here, because that's served by the Kent Water Company. So there is, again, we have not invested in infrastructure on the water side for 20 years. So there is a useful life to everything, and we've hit it with Main Street, we've hit it with some of our water infrastructure. The city did a major sewer project a few years ago. Our Parks Department, our parks assets have literally hit their useful life. The ticket, or I should say, the check has come due, and we've got to find ways to upgrade everything, because we have an exceptional quality of life. Our population is growing. People are moving here. We've had literally record population growth in the last 2 years, and they're coming here because this is an exceptional community, and we have to do what we can to plan for that growth and continue to make sure that we can expand where we can and maintain what we have. I appreciate the questions too.
The mayor is a representative of the city. I would like to give a shout out to Ray Black.
Absolutely.
30-year Boys Club director and all-around good citizen. And I guess he's broken records as far as his progress with his lung transplant. I think he got out in 5 days. The old record, I think, was 7 days. So I think he's doing fantastic, and just want to let him know that we're thinking about him, we're praying for him, and his recovery looks fantastic, and we'll continue to do so.
I talked to Ray a day before he went in for surgery. He didn't know at that time that he was going to get the call to be at the hospital, but he was prepared for that call. And I can tell you, he already had such an excitement and enthusiasm about his second lease on life, basically, and the gift he's been given. And he is going to commit and contribute to the city of Madison and Jefferson County in a way that will probably dwarf his first 30 years here, because he has that much energy and passion and commitment and a sense of urgency. And so he's a great example of all of this. So thank you, Chloe, for bringing up Ray.
Motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thanks, council, and thanks to all of our guests tonight. Katie, thanks for your questions. They're just no short answers. Could talk for an hour. And since Shelby's been coming to all of our meetings, he's like, this guy can really talk for an hour.
It was a shorter meeting. Was Heather